In this episode of cTV Explore, we want to dig deeper in the film adaptation of Jane Austen's most famous novel, Pride and Prejudice. The book has been adapted several times, but only 2 times for the big screen. In this video, we want to focus on the 2005 film adaptation by Joe Wright. More precisely, we want to explore the central relationship which develops between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. What idea of love is portrayed, and what can we learn from it? We all know these movies. A beautiful girl stands in a crowded room, and suddenly a handsome man enters and their eyes meet. The room stands still. Love at first sight. But various outer obstacles, social conventions, prevent them to fulfill their desire from being together. This portrayal of romantic love that is irrespective of all advice and expectations of other people, that is against all odds, is one of various ideas of true love. Pride and Prejudice turns the standard romantic story upside down because it presents us an idea of love that isn't conventionally romantic, even if it ends like many other love stories with a happy end. Well, the goal of Pride and Prejudice is still romance and happiness, and Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy have to overcome a series of obstacles to move towards their happy union. But their love isn't instant. They aren't even aware of it. Actually, they don't like each other very much. In fact, the development of their love is like a constant ball. They approach and retreat, tease and repel each other as in a dance. Almost each time Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth meet, things end up in a quarrel. Love and marriage are key interests in Pride and Prejudice, and even though we enjoy the romantic fulfillment, which runs through the plot, we're never allowed to forget that material circumstances matter. We have to keep in mind that in the 19th century, marriage was women's best route to financial security and social respect. Mr. Darcy doesn't ignore those social aspects. He is concerned about the social decline in marriage to Elizabeth because she is of a lower social and economic class than him. He doesn't find it easy to confess his love for Elizabeth, and he describes his struggle in the course of his proposal.
Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your circumstances?
He would make a social sacrifice in order to gain her. So in Pride and Prejudice, outer obstacles can always be overcome. The true obstacle blocking their union is not money or social opinion, though they are indeed hindrances in the path of love. So what is the real problem? The real problem is an internal blockage on the part of the lovers themselves. An inner obstacle formed by opinions, and involves the title traits of pride and prejudice. These 2 words determine the actions of Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy the course of the whole movie. It is interesting that Austen's original title for Pride and Prejudice was First Impressions, and both titles focus on key elements of the story. Elizabeth develops a prejudice against Darcy from their first meeting, and Darcy is filled with pride. But these personality traits are present in both protagonists. It is a crossover. Both suffer from pride and prejudice. Darcy's pride leads him to social prejudice, and Elizabeth's prejudice makes her so proud that she turns down the hand of Mr. Darcy.
From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
Right at the beginning of the film, we see that Elizabeth is hurt in her pride when she overhears his description of her.
But her sister Elizabeth is very agreeable.
Perfectly tolerable, I dare say. Not handsome enough to tempt me.
So it is false pride and prejudices that prevent them from getting closer. So how do they manage to overcome their character flaws? First, by recognizing them. Elizabeth's first impression of Darcy and Wickham are mistaken. She doesn't realize it until Darcy hands her a letter in which he illuminates Wickham's true background and also tells her why he was against a connection between Bingley and Jane. After reading it, she does not hesitate to judge herself firmly. So she is willing to question her own perspective, and she admits that she has done injustice to Mr. Darcy. Darcy's attitude also changes. He opens up to Elizabeth, and from the unapproachable, arrogant aristocrat that he was, he now presents his noble character. He earns Elizabeth's hand by making amends for Elizabeth's allegations. He took care about Lydia and Wickham and about Jane and Bingley. What happens between Darcy and Elizabeth is that they first hurt and then restore each other's pride by realizing their own mistakes and setting them right. Elizabeth comes to realize that, contrary to her first impressions, Darcy is the kind of man that she would wish to marry and build a life with. She recognizes Darcy's true value, In the end, it is about repentance, and after overcoming false pride and prejudice, they are able to have a real encounter and treat each other with respect. So both achieve some genuine insight into themselves. They have builded their inner self to a more moral and intellectual character. Their love succeed because they take a fitting perspective on the other and overcome those inner barriers that keep them at a distance. So the idea of love that Pride and Prejudice portrays is of responsible and respectful nature. Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy respect their differences while feeling empathy for each other. There is no rejection of convention, no selfishness, no rebellion, just a rebellion against first impressions. It is an idea of love that doesn't separate individual happiness from the responsibilities to others. A love that is part of a process of growing up into something greater. Two humans brought together by virtue, who become equally visible so that they can really see each other even after the first glow of excitement or bad impression. So sometimes we need time and thought to see a person's real character. We need to temper our pride and overcome prejudice, and then maybe we will find the love we really want.